So I'm in America and I'm going to give you guys a bit of an insight into what's happening. So as you can see behind me, things are slowly ramping up. I'm going to zoom in there and you can see better. And in America, you're really starting to see the mainstream hype for this fight really come alive now, as you can see behind me in Times Square. So I'm in America and I'm going to give you guys a bit of an insight into what's happening in and around Times Square as well. As you can see, some Mexican music playing behind me, and I'm going to give you a bit of a better and broader understanding of what's going on and just how big this fight is, with context around it too. I must say, it has taken me by surprise at how late the promotion was in America by Netflix, but when you look in and around Times Square, you can see that, not necessarily right now, but sporadically throughout the day, around about once every minute or so, once every 2 minutes, you'll see a fight poster for this weekend. So it's being marketed more than you may realize in that sense. But on that note, I'm going to give you some better context. So both at night and during the daytime, you'll see it all over billboard advertising in Times Square, but not just there. All over New York and New Jersey as well. What I've noticed is that on the yellow cabs, which are typically used to take people around the taxi equivalent over there in the States, it's all over them as well. And there are particular areas of New York and Times Square that I'm going to show you some footage of in a few moments' time. And they're tourist hotbeds, but also the spaces for advertising and marketing that are most difficult to compete for, like Madison Square Garden, for example. There's an abundance of marketing in and around that area. But even in places like MSG and the Grand Central Station Terminal, which have a lot of competition for this fight to compete with, because the billboards surrounding it also have a lot of events on similar dates, the marketing behind this and the fact it's got the Netflix push really does make it stand out. Not just that they're playing the advert constantly of these two guys essentially celebrating after their fights, and that's part of the general marketing material. It's more so the fact that there's a real emphasis on this being just a few days from now. And even as I was crossing the Brooklyn Bridge, you can see here beneath me on the taxis that were running past, the yellow cabs were all showing Canelo versus Terence Crawford advertising. And bear in mind that the fight will be taking place in Las Vegas. This is New York and New Jersey footage that I'm showing you, the other side of the country. But at the same time, for a fight of this magnitude, this is the place where you want to advertise it. Times Square, New York City. That is the billboard hub and essentially capital, so to speak, of pushing events into the mainstream limelight. Because this isn't just about hardcore boxing fan appeal. This is a Netflix event that they want to transform into a masses event, so to speak. Not just for casuals, but people who have never watched boxing. The sorts of people you're seeing in these videos, random people, everyday public Joe on the street, is who they're targeting. And that is actually reflected in the marketing for this fight. Even though it may not appear that way online, what I'm seeing on the ground here over in the United States is quite different, and it does go to show the gravity of this late push. Now, it wasn't an early one, as I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the video, and that was surprising because with Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson, what Netflix did really well was transform that event into a cultural mega event, where the average Joe, the general public, knew even 2 months before the fight, even after it got rescheduled, that Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson was happening. Everyone was talking about it. This fight doesn't quite have that same gravitational pull to the masses, but in terms of marketing, it's definitely being blasted in every direction possible to try and get the public interest as near enough to that level as possible. But there's a few different factors at play here that will make it still a bit of an upward battle to try and mirror the sorts of numbers that Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson conjured up. Canelo and Terence Crawford aren't of the same star level that Jake Paul and Mike Tyson are. They are more universally known. Now, of course, Canelo is a lot more famous than Crawford is, but it still takes two to tango and produce the kind of numbers that Jake Paul and Mike Tyson did. Now, given that those two were both outright bigger stars than these two, it's going to be an upward battle to try and mirror those numbers. When you factor in that Bud is still a few levels lower down in terms of stardom than the other three, that does make this a more uphill climb, even with all of this mega Netflix promotion, which, if it's like this in Times Square, you know it will be massive around the rest of the states too. Now, typically, the big fight promotion doesn't really get going until around about the Wednesday of Fight Week, which is today. That's when you'll see the promoters, or in this case, Netflix as well, the mega broadcaster, spray gunning the masses in volume. Loads of content, loads of advertising. It's a late push typically. However, the footage I showed you in this video is also from Thursday of last week. And it was pretty hefty back then. And that was in New York. And the fight's obviously taking place in Vegas. Now, I hopped across to New Jersey a little bit as well. And I also went to places like the MetLife Stadium just to get a bit of a better understanding about what sort of advertising proximity this fight had to other sports events. Now, in New York, you're going to think of the New York Giants, the New York Yankees, the New York Jets. I was at this weekend's game between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the New York Jets, and around the stadium, I saw advertising for the fight as well. Not massive, not a mega push, not a lot of it, but it was there, and it was there enough for you to feel it, so to speak. So it made its presence felt. Now, with the Yankee Stadium, which is a bit further north in Manhattan, nearer to the Bronx area, that area too, you could see next to the McDonald's on the billboards in and around behind, it was being advertised. And whenever you saw a yellow cab drop someone off for the New York Yankees game, that, again, a lot of those cabs with that triangular sort of Toblerone chocolate bar shaped advertising they've got on the top of their yellow cabs here, you saw all the advertising, similar to what you saw in Times Square. Wednesday Addams, the famous Netflix series, or Canelo against Terence Crawford, plastered everywhere. It was those two on loop, kind of like an iPhone playlist. Whenever you saw Yankees fans arriving at the stadium, the cabs they are in, above those, it had the same advertising. So it's going to be interesting to see what sorts of numbers this does on Saturday night. But across the other side of the country in New York, where I'm at the moment, it's certainly making its presence felt. More so than people like myself from Europe may think at face value based on what they've seen online. And the overall traction, which in Europe is at a lesser pace than what's gathering over here in the States. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions that you'd like me to answer for you in future videos or the extended breakdowns, just tweet them over to me. That's at ElusiveRaf on Twitter. If you guys want to see my daily fight analysis uploads, I upload those every day to Instagram, and that's at Elusive 2.0 on Instagram.